This is Chad Barron. You're listening to My Alien Life.
So those kind of speeds exist in our galaxy, and this object came from outside of our solar system. Having a large relative velocity, remember objects in our solar in the galaxy are moving with relative velocities on average of between 200 and 300 kilometers per second, which is much, much faster than any object in our solar system. So any random object that wasn't part of our solar system happened to be traveling in the direction of our solar system, it could easily traverse our solar system with a speed that's incredibly large.
It had been tested on lab mice, and it didn't kill them, and so I wasn't really that leery about it.
I can see there's a fear on his face. And he took off, we took off. So something was wrong there, man. Something was wrong there, man. They cut into something that they didn't know. They didn't know what was wrong there, man. And there was some problems.
My Alien Life is recorded high atop the Northern Rocky Mountains and is heard all over the world, and you can listen everywhere fine podcasts are found. My website is www.myalienlifepodcast.com. There you'll find links to every episode, stories, photos, the My Alien Life Legends page, and much more. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and consider becoming a patron while you're checking out all the content. I'm your host, Cameron Logan. This is My Alien Life, and the podcast starts right now.
My Alien Life Podcast.
Three, two, 1, 0, and liftoff.
It's Thursday night, and I believe we have a guest tonight. We do. Yeah, so that's happening tonight in just a minute. I was going to talk to you first. There are a few things that came up during the week, and it never ceases to amaze me with my guests that I have and people that I meet along the way, because it's really, really fascinating, the things that happen to people and the things that I have the opportunity to hear about. And this last week was no exception. And I'm not going to name his name because maybe he'd want to be on the show later. Maybe. I don't know. But let's just call him Bob. Bob L. Not that Bob L. Different Bob L. But Bob L. was writing to me, and we communicate quite often. So at least every couple of days. And the man is kind of a scientist. I know he's in a medical-related field, and he's very familiar with the scientific method, very interested in science, and apparently interested in what I do. Well, not really what I do, but the people that I have on as guests. And one of the things that, he from time to time, he will throw articles at me that I'll use on the podcast, or he'll throw a video at me, or whatever. And that's cool. And you can do that as well. I'm on Facebook. You can find me, Cameron Logan, My Alien Life Podcast. There's multiple Facebook pages, but if you have ideas, give them to me. If you have really cool videos or people that I can get a hold of, that's great, and makes my job easier. But so Bob L. in the last week has been giving me videos. What happened in his home was he put in a surveillance system and started noticing some unusual anomalies. I guess we could call them anomalies. I'm not sure what else, for lack of a better term. Orbs. So he was testing this system. I think this is the way it went. And he noticed these orbs. And the orbs weren't highly unusual at first, other than sort of like white round balls of light. Not sure. To me, they look two-dimensional, but they certainly could have been more than that. It's really hard to tell. The video camera is looking through a door to the outside. You can see the street outside. And once in a while, these orbs would come flying by. And so, if you've done a little research on orbs, or you know anything about orbs, the jury's still out. And you can see articles that are, people explaining how and what they are. And they're definitely light beings of some sort, or just the opposite side of the coin, which they're it's dust, and has to do mostly with the function of the video camera itself, and interpreting these pieces of dust or whatever, and the camera sort of basically over exaggerates what it's seeing, and it's trying to compensate, and it creates orbs. So Bob L. was watching these orbs, and his scientific mind is going to work, and so he decides to perform an experiment, or a series of experiments, to try to explain what these are. And they seem to react to him, and they seem to react to the camera, more specifically when the camera is recording. But they're reacting, and they're responding to Bob L. So it's amazing to see this, because not only do we get to see these on video, but there's still photos as well. And, I can't even tell you what exactly they look like. They sort of look like a three-dimensional disc, sort of thin, maybe like for the lack of a better way to describe this, like a thick pita bread sort of thing. And they bend in certain ways. So they're not exactly round all the time, but for the most part, they have properties that are round. It does, to me, look like they have three-dimensional properties. And, they're responding to Bob, and they're responding to his movements. And basically, they're around him when he's there. And so that's, for some of you, that's not unusual, but it's unusual for me in this experiment that he performed, because he actually took the camera and put it in a fish tank. And the idea being that it's a cleaner environment, and there's not going to be any particles that camera could pick up in the fish tank. Of course, there's particles around it, but the basic premise is that they're responding to him. So when he's there, the orbs are there, and to me, that's unusual. The latest thing was Bob was outside, and I guess it was yesterday, and saw some sort of object in the night sky, and it was highly unusual. It was kind of a light streak, and I'm not going to go into that and explain it, but there was an object in the sky, and I guess my point is that there's things out there that happen to people that are very, very unusual. And a lot of times we know as a group that there are unusual things that happen to people, and they are never usually alone. So Bob is seeing orbs in the house. Excuse me. He's seeing objects in the sky, and that happens. And, that's always one of my questions is, why do people see these things, but not only do they see a finite set of things, 2-3 things, maybe something happens once or twice, but they may see other objects, other sort of apparitions and things like that, or experience them in a different way, hear them, or whatever. It seems to me that when unusual things happen to people, they usually follow up with something else that's unusual. And I don't know why that is. So I don't know. That's something to think about. And if you wanted to answer me, you certainly could, reach out on the Facebook page, or that's probably the best way to get a hold of me. And we'll talk about that. Love to have Bob on the show. Bob L., if you're listening, think about it. So the invitation's always there. I've asked him before, and so we have more to talk about now with him. And if he'll come on the show, we'll dig into that, find out what's been happening in his life. So, yeah, some unusual stuff. My guest tonight, she's patiently waiting in the studio, and I don't know much about her. I've seen her on Facebook. She's a stand-up comedian, an author, and she's also a podcaster. Thank you for coming on. It's great to see you. You're a comedian.
Yep. Yes, I have been doing comedy on and off for 15 years. I've hosted shows. I have done variety shows. I've performed all over the New York area in a lot of different states, and I've made some money at it,
So what's your base? Where are you from, and where do you live now?
So I was born in West Virginia, and I grew up in Ohio, and I live in Pennsylvania now.
Nice. So you're back east. I'm in Montana. One of my dreams for a very, very long time was to be in comedy. I did a lot of writing. I did a open mic one time in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Philadelphia. I was in Philadelphia. And I kind of just showed up there one time, and there was no audience. It was just me, and it was a bunch of comedians, and like no audience showed up. And so these guys kept giving me a bad time, and I wasn't doing anything wrong in the crowd, but they seemed to pick on me and wanted me to get up there, so I did. But anyway, so when did you start doing comedy? And let me just tell everybody, there's a paranormal side to you as well. But I want to know, I'm interested in comedy. So when did you start doing comedy?
I started doing comedy when I was 20 in New York City. So I was living at the Covenant House in New York City, which is a homeless shelter for kids under 21. And I just thought to myself, because I had grown up watching, Comedy Central and stuff like that. And I used to tell like literally everyone that I wanted to do that. And then reaching further back into my memory bank, I was like 5 telling jokes to my family and just going like, get it? Like, why does the elephant have a trunk? Because he goes on vacation. Get it? It's just like, I just wanted to tell jokes really badly. And then I was at this like course for people with disabilities because I was born with cerebral palsy, and it's like supposed to help you get a job, even though it didn't help any of us get a job. But we met each other, and there was this other guy there. And, there were plenty of people there, but there's a particular person there who was putting on a variety show, and he kept telling me that I was funny. And I was like, I don't know. I said that typical line, at least I hear this typical line from people that either end up in comedy. They say, oh, I'm just funny in conversation. And so I said that same line, and he goes, no, you should try it out. You should try it out. And because we were all together for 3 weeks, like Monday to Friday for 3 weeks for like 5 hours a day, I was like, fine, okay. Like week 3, I was like, I'll do it, fine. I mean, you seem to really believe in me. And so I did like a 10-minute set, which is not what you're supposed to do starting out, but it was it went pretty well. I got laughs, which is also not what usually happens, which is that if that's not your experience, it's okay. Everyone bombs. And bombing means that you don't get any laughs at some point. But it's a lot different being funny on stage than it is being funny around people, though, So this show was at the Gay Center in New York City, right? Because the guy happened to be gay, and at that time in my life, I didn't know that I was like non-binary, pansexual, sort of like in the late 90s, all we really had was I'm bisexual, maybe, and so I actually just made fun of my friends who were lesbians, and I made fun of. In good humor, I made fun of like how they get together and how quickly their relationship evolves, and because literally my friend had met her girlfriend, and like a week later they moved in, and then like 2 months after that they were starting a cake business together, and so they were like really laughing about it. So it went well.
What about one of the things that, you're doing two things that I've always wanted to do, and I am doing one of those, writing a book. You wrote a book. And so I actually got a chance to look at part of this book. And in Amazon, it gives you a glimpse into it. And it's fairly interesting. What made you decide to write a book? When did you write this? And there's some heavy stuff in there.
Oh yeah, well, so the question that you're asking actually goes into like several different aspects, which is the spiritual side of that, the esoteric side of that, is that my guide team literally spent about a decade telling me to write a book. And I was like, because I'm only 36 right now. I'll be 37 in January. And so I was like, I'm young. Like, why do you want me to write? They're like, no, you need to write about your trauma. And I was like, why? I haven't even figured it all out yet. Like, I'm still in therapy. Like, so this was the discussion that I was having with them. And so the pandemic happens, and I'm like, well, now we can't go outside. So what am I going to do with my time? And that's when I started writing the book finally. And I had all this like magical support. Like, just people showed up to help me, like my friend who has a PhD, which I don't know if that's relevant really, but she's really smart, and I'm really smart too. It's okay, you don't have to go to school. I flunked out of college 3 times, but yeah, so she is like really good at copy editing, and she was like, I can help you like edit it, and like she named all my chapters, this woman, so it's like dedicated to her, the book. And she organized my book for me, and then I just published it on Amazon. And yeah, I mean, I get sales from it every month, which I was not expecting. It's just, I just follow really what the universe tells me to do, which maybe makes me feel like sometimes I'm just a tool, but I sometimes feel that way. It's like, I feel like I've been to this planet a bunch of times, and like I know the way it goes here. I also feel like me and several million of my friends are part of the Big Bang Theory. So we're like responsible for the creation of this universe, which sounds like totally, completely nuts. But it just makes sense to me, like in the core of my little being. It makes sense to me that like Mela is not who I am, but she is who I am in this life. And she thinks that she's real and like she's cool and stuff, but like, I just feel like she has her own idea of what she wants to do. And then I call it the oversoul. Some people call it the higher self. From my oversoul perspective, I have to like talk nice to her in order to get her to do like my agenda. So it's like this warring of like an oversoul agenda versus free will. And it's actually really funny.
So something that really jumps out to me right at the beginning, it says you're fighting for an appropriate mental health diagnosis. And then you also mentioned, your part in listening to the universe. So let's go with this mental health diagnosis first. What was happening there, and you felt that there was something not right, or what was happening?
Oh, okay. So the questions you're asking me are really cool, but I just want like the listeners to know that this is always a layered answer for me, and mental health is very valid. Like I just want everybody to know, disclaimer, like if you need to take medication, if you need to do like, talk to psychiatrists, or like go to the psych ward, or like, do what they call the 3D Western medicine route, like I fully support you. Like I do not subscribe to people that are like, don't take those drugs. I'm like, sometimes they're helpful to like stabilize, but I think, now I'm going to get esoteric again, like each one of us comes down here to this planet, to this realm, to this dimension, and we have a soul contract. But then I was channeling with a friend, a little side note, but it's related, the other day, last week, and I was like, you know what? The soul contract. We come down here with a soul contract, but the soul contract can be changed and rearranged and stuff. And what really matters is what's in the blueprint. And she was like, what's the blueprint? I was like, the blueprint is what's in the Akashic record. And I was like really excited about it. And so my dad, so then it goes to my dad, who went through a lot of severe trauma with his father and stuff, the cycle continues. And then I thought about it. And again, I'm not telling people to like talk to people that were mean to them and stuff. No contact is a very valid thing. I'm just saying, like, I came to this thing where I was like, what if my dad is a friend of mine, like the soul, that exists in his body is actually a friend of mine that I went to, and I was like, hey friend, like we've been friends for a long time, like can you treat me like shit? Can you be my dad and treat me like shit so that I can learn this sort of like niche trauma that humans go through, because I really need to teach them how to awaken. Like that is just what makes sense to me. Like when I say that, I'm like, that makes complete sense. But at the same time, I don't want anybody listening to this to think that I'm saying that their trauma isn't valid or it's not real, or like, because I went through a lot of therapy. But so when the experience of going to a bunch of psychiatrists and going to the psych ward 5 times and like trying different types of therapy, it just didn't fit for me, because like they would change the diagnosis all the time. Like first it was depression, then it was bipolar disorder, then it changed to complex PTSD, and there was some discussion about dissociative identity disorder, which is all valid. I think I've had symptoms of all these, you know, but there wasn't very much or very little discussion of trauma and how how trauma like sticks in the body and affects your cells and like enlarges your amygdala and stuff like that. So I did a lot of my own research, and that's when I don't know if we can talk about this on the podcast, but that's when I started delving into psychedelics, and I actually got a lot of help from psychedelics. Like it was amazing, the type of ways that it rearranged like the canals in my brain. So
we can talk all about psychedelics. I actually have somebody that was here earlier, and he has a Native American / psychedelic church, and
nice.
Been trying to get him on the show, and he hasn't really gotten the courage to do that yet. But that's something that he's organized here in Montana, and so yeah, I hear about it all the time. So what you're telling me is that that's been part of the therapy, or it's been part of that psychedelic realm that combines with the universe, so to speak.
Yeah, so right now
Or
I have
both.
a psychiatrist that I really like, so I'm sort of in both worlds. And like last year I did a course of 6 sessions of ketamine with a medical doctor who had 35 years of experience in the ER. And his story is that he became obsessed with ketamine and how it like helped grow certain parts of the brain. I don't remember the name of it, but it's like your dendrites or something. It can grow those or like expand them. And my experience of ketamine, having already tried mushrooms, LSD, ecstasy, it was quite a jarring experience, but in a good way, because in my personal experience, mushrooms is like a 4-hour thing where you come up and it's very gentle. I mean, it can upset your stomach because it's a fungus, but that's pretty much. And then you just come down, you see shapes and stuff, and you feel warm, and it's great. And then ecstasy I did with like a trip sitter, which you don't have to do. I just wanted to have that experience, and I just felt like I was very internal.
Right.
Like I felt like there were beings talking to me about letting go of trauma, and that what my dad went through wasn't like mine to organize or figure out. And it was like they were like showing me a trash bag that I was carrying around, and they were like, you can let go of this. And I remember in that session that I was negotiating with them. I was like, but I can't, because if I let go of it, then I won't be able to save my dad, which is actually very typical of kids that go through this extreme type of emotional abuse. It's like you have this desire to have your parent be nice to you. It's like your ultimate goal. And they were saying, you don't have to make it so that he's nice. It's not your job. And so they spent, I don't know how many hours going back and forth with me about this, but at the end I let go of the trash bag, which I think was the goal. And after that had done, that part was done, then like this new group of people beings came in, and I remember them sort of lamenting about the time they had left because I had taken so much time with the other group. And then I remember saying to them, I didn't think that you guys like thought about time in this sort of linear fashion. And they're like, oh, we don't, but you do. And I was like, okay. And that was just quite interesting. And then LSD isn't even, and by the way, just a programming note, if you do take any kind of ecstasy, I really recommend that people go and get 5-HTP from like GNC or whatnot, because what ecstasy does is it floods your brain with serotonin. And then when you come down, it drains all the serotonin out. So you need to replace that serotonin. You can do it with like fish and bananas and stuff, but like
Right.
5-HTP is a lot easier. And so then I tried LSD, and that was like a 16-hour trip. The ecstasy was like 12 hours, and now we're getting into like 16-hour territory. And that one I felt was more like mechanical. If I don't know how else to explain it. And the ketamine was even more mechanical, because I just felt like there was a one singular being that came down through all 6 sessions and was just like, you don't need this. I'm taking it. So it's just like they separated me from my trauma and just took it like they were vacuuming out my field. And I was like, oh my God, okay, well, you can have it. I'm not fighting you. And they're like, good, because we're going to take it anyway. It's like, I was being robbed, but it's like, I didn't mind that I was being robbed, you know?
So you're talking about big kids doses, or are we microdosing? What
so
kind of
I
dosage?
had tried microdosing with shrooms, but I actually prefer what's called the hero dose. Talking to you is, I realize that I actually know a lot about this stuff. So if you're going to do shrooms, there's like different ways to do it. Like there's microdose. You can microdose with between like a small amount, like up to 1 gram. Right. Which is like that's not considered a microdose. It's actually, you're probably looking at like half a gram or like 200 micrograms, you know. And then you want to do like 3 days, and then have 1 day where you don't, and then you do it for the course of like 30 days or something.
Right.
And then there's like the middle trip, which is like 2 grams, where you might feel like a body high, and then you get into like 3.5 gram territory, where it's just like you're vibing, you're definitely high, you shouldn't be doing like, you know, don't go to work. And then there's like a 5 gram, which is considered the hero dose, where like your ego completely dissolves and you might talk to the universe or God or whatever you perceive. And so I really enjoy hero doses, because it's just like 4 hours of like tripping out and just like meeting with whoever wants. And I make intentions, you know. I actually don't recommend just going into it just being like, let's see what happens. You want to make sure that you set some type of intention for like a good trip.
Right. So we're throwing a lot out here, you know, without, you know, to the novice out there, or people who are uneducated about psychedelics. Can you give them a little psychedelic 101? You know?
Yeah. So I mean, shrooms is like there's so many different strains of it, you know, and so I would definitely try to get the information of the strain that you're accessing, because like, for example, your golden teacher is considered like I don't want to say basic, because golden teachers are awesome, but like the teacher variety, the golden variety, then, you know, people that there tend to be people that are like super into, and this is the actual name of it, the penis envies, which makes me laugh. And then there's like blue meanies, and there's like, you know, just so many different types. And so I just want people to know that like there can be body highs, like shrooms that just give you a body high, and then there can be shrooms that are heavily on like the mysticism and stuff like that. So it's really good to know who you're talking to, what you're vibing with, because I've heard people say, well, I did shrooms like, you know, when I was in Reno or whatnot, and then I did shrooms like 2 years later and it was a totally different experience. I'm like, yeah, because you probably had different strains and you were talking to two different shrooms. And I also would not do, I mean, I think this is common knowledge, but I don't want to I just want to throw it all out there. I would not do psychedelics with people you don't trust or people you don't know that well. Because, you know, especially if you have limited experience being under the influence and you don't know how it affects your body. Because, you know, people talk a lot about ecstasy being like you get very touchy-feely. It's because you're filled with serotonin, and that's like the love hormone. So I didn't personally have that experience. I went really internal, and I think it was like figuring out how to love my child self, which is it's a different experience, but it's very valid. I had that experience on LSD, because the first time I did LSD, I was with an ex-boyfriend who was a boyfriend at the time. And all I wanted to do was like do the no pants dance. And he was like, hey, don't you want to do some like internal work? And I was like, no, I do not. So that was quite an interesting experience. I mean, he obliged after trying to convince me to go down the different routes. So it's not like, you know, he took advantage of the situation at all. And then, and LSD also, acid, you want to make sure that you ask whoever you're getting it from what the IUD is, like what the micrograms is, because so LSD is like a little square piece of paper, and that's called like one hit. And you can put up to like 900 IUD on one little, and I don't even know how they would do that, because that's an extreme amount, because you're talking about like 100 IUD to 150 is like a nice trip. Like that's where I live. Like, you know what I mean? I've been doing psychedelics for 5, 6, 7 years now, and I don't want to go above 250. So that's like, take that for what you will, or like 900. I probably wouldn't come back from that for like a week. And so, and then Molly, you want to stick to like your 75 milligram to 150 milligram range for an adult. Well, obviously you shouldn't give drugs to children, but you know what I mean.
So I'd mentioned microdosing before, and there is more and more research now, because obviously people are finding benefits to this, and even though people have been reporting benefits for decades, and people have been looking into it since the 70s, right now it's there's so many people out there who are probably searching for answers and drugs and things that could help them along the way, and including myself. So what do you think the nexus of this was? What was the tipping point? And is it mainstream yet, or is it going to be mainstream, or is that yet to come?
Yeah, so you probably know, I mean, I don't want to like age you right now, but like the CIA is who started doing like a lot of things. They started experimenting with LSD, and they would do trials. There's actually, you can look this up on YouTube.
Yeah,
you can find videos from the 50s about this one. Like there's this really famous one that I watched like I think last month. I think it's great. So she's just like, it's black and white, and she's just like talking about the love and how the connectingness of it all, and she's just like, everything is love, it's all love. And so there was this guy who I forget his name, but like he like either escaped, or maybe it wasn't that dramatic. He like, left the trial, and then like he took a bus all over the US, like just giving LSD to people, like, and it wasn't hidden, because on the side of the bus he was like, LSD trips, and I think his name was Kenneth, but don't quote me. And he's still alive. And so so then I think my theory was that he was waking up too many people, because what happened in the 70s and 60s in this country. And that's when, in the late 70s, when the government criminalized it. And then there was like this whole time where, like in the 50s, it's like, not to bring up gay people, but it's related to me in the marketing, because they were like, don't let your children outside, because there's like gay people out there like lurking in the bushes. Then they changed it to LSD will give your baby brain damage. It's just like so crazy. Like if you watch these ads, they're like intense, like gaslighting for everyone. So they made it a Schedule 1 drug, but like cut to today, San Francisco just decriminalized psychedelics like recently. So I think it's coming back around, because there's all this like actual research that says psychedelics really help. I mean, we still have, I'm not a fan of how like veterans are used in like, mental health, where they're like, oh, 22 veterans kill themselves every day, but that's true. And suicide is still like the 10th leading cause of death. Like, I don't know why people don't talk about that, like we need to be really addressing that, because a lot of, as somebody that has dealt with a lot of suicidal ideation in my life, like I really think it comes from your brain not being able to express itself, and feeling like, and I don't want to minimize it, but there's this like amazing poem where it's like view from the way down or something like that. It's like he jumps off the bridge, right? And then he decides he wants to live when he's halfway to the water. And it's just like this really poignant poem. And he survived, obviously, because he wouldn't be able to write the poem if he didn't. But it is like, in my experience of when I have really deeply considered killing myself, is that what happened? Like, I felt like my guides were like, you don't have to do this. Like, there's more work to be done. And I'd be like, shut up. Like, I just don't want to be here. It sucks. And they're like, they would always be like, you almost figured it out. I'm like, almost figured out what? It's like I figured out something, and then there's something else that like knocks me down, And so, but they were like, they kept, so it was interesting how like when I was in the psych ward, I felt like my guides would talk to me even more when I was in there. Like, this is all part of the plan. I'm like, what fucking plan are you talking about? You guys are fucking bonkers. Like, you think I would come down here to this planet to just like have a horrible time and not be able to figure it out and have my brain, when I wake up in the morning, if I can sleep at all, be like, hey, you should kill yourself today? Like, that's not a good time. Like I'm 17 years old going to college when I'm in high school because they're like, you're smart, and so you should go to college now. And all I can think about is how I want to drive into oncoming traffic. Like, this is not a great time. And then like I'm talking to kids my age, and they're just like not having this experience, and like they would approach like people have empathy. So it's like I'm sitting on I'm being really real right now because I feel like there's somebody or a group of people that will listen to your podcast and really resonate with this experience. Like, I'm just in college and like sitting on the commons and just like putting my face on the fucking picnic table and just like I just didn't want to move. I'm just like, I hate this whole fucking thing. And then as luck would have it, or just coincidence, I end up knowing like 5 people who killed themselves, like one recently back in March too. It's just like one of my friends literally goes outside and lays in the road, and that's how he dies. It's like, whoa, just like gruesome ends. It's like, you're just done with it. So you go outside of your house in the middle of the night and you lay in the road, and then this 19-year-old kid runs you over and you probably fuck him up for life. It's like, God rest your soul. But that was like, I don't agree with that. Like, don't involve people in it, but so it's just crazy. And then, the one recent was my friend Cameron, actually. So he has the same name as you. And like, I shit you not, since March, since he left, people named Cameron have been coming into my life. I'm like, okay,
that happens.
Cameron. I'm like, are you sending me these people? Like, is this a cosmic joke? Because honestly, Cameron, my friend who died, he is like talking to me nonstop from home. And he's just like so happy to not have a body. Okay. So like when we die, our avatar, that's what I call the avatar. And the reason why Cameron and I connected is because he heard me on a different podcast, and I was talking about how Mela is my avatar, and that's what he was talking about, like in his 20s when he was in college. So he was like 3 years younger than me, and he was like, I talked about Cameron being my avatar my whole college career, everything. Like, you thought I was crazy? And I'm like, no, I think Cameron is your avatar. And so then when he got home after March, after he killed himself, he then was like bouncing around in the Akashic record, which the Akashic record, if you guys don't know, I'm sure you talked about it before, is this like hall of record books. It's like the Encyclopedia Britannica. That's how I describe it. So you can literally look yourself up, like your energy key up, your soul number up, and read about your lifetimes. So it's just a record of all the lifetimes you've had. So I had this dream where he was like bouncing around in the Akashic records, like flipping through the pages and being like, Mela, isn't this cool? I'm like, yeah, it's cool, but like, you could be still on Earth doing your mission. He was like, no, I just wanted to go home for a little bit. I'm like, for a little bit? And so like now it's like evolved into him visiting me and saying that he can come back and start a different, he calls it spawn point in the past. Like he can go back to 1989 where he was originally born, the year, or Cameron was originally born, and then he could meet me again. I'm like, there's nothing that says that you can't do this. But for me, it just seems like that would be a lot of work. Like it would be a lot of wormholes to jump through, because you have to negotiate that kind of thing. Right. And this all the questions that I was asking him was like, do you have authorization to do this? Because typically if you do end up unaliving yourself, and this is just putting it out there, like if you do end up unaliving yourself, if it's the first time you've done it, you tend to, if you come back, because I don't think that if you unalive yourself that I think you have to come back to Earth and finish the contract, So I feel like there's this capacity for, or this, what is the word? It's not capacity. This thing that was like you get in this cycle of killing yourself. Like you just keep doing it until you figure out how to stop doing it. And because when I met Cameron, he messaged me on Instagram, And then we talked on the phone shortly after that, and I don't remember why. But I remember the one statement he made that's just like burned into my brain. We were just talking about, suicidal ideation. And he said, I don't think I'm going to make it to 40. And I said, oh, well, that's a pretty heavy thing to tell somebody you don't know that well. And he was like, yeah, well, I just don't think I will. And he made it to 32. He was only 32. And the thing about that is that he only said he was back on his bullshit. And I was like, do you want to talk about it? And it's like a week later, he goes, but I don't want to stay on that topic. What I want to tell you is that he still talks to me. Mm-hmm. And I fully believe that whether or not he has authorization to come back and meet me again, I'm not attached to that outcome. I've already told him, I was like, we are obviously connected, because he like sent me to his mother. I don't know his mom. I only talked to him for 2 years. I never even knew what he looked like. Okay. All I have is a message that he sent me on Instagram saying, hey, I can't explain it, but I feel like I know you, like your mannerisms and the way that you talk feels familiar to me. And so if somebody says that to me, then yeah, you probably know me. I probably know you, but I'm not going to go into this whole diatribe. So our relationship was him asking me questions about the universe, me answering, and then depending on what mood he was in, he would be either receptive to it or he would be like, this is weird, which is actually quite typical for me, which is fine. But I'm just saying, like, he would not shut up about me talking to his mom. So like a week after he died, I reached out to her and I was like, hey, I know this might be like super weird, but Cameron wants to tell you these things. So I tell her these things, and his sister answers because they're both managing his Instagram account. And she's like, hey, this is Megan, the sister. And you said things that my mom feels, and there's no way you can know this stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, I have a direct line to your kid and he wants to tell you these things. And basically Cameron will, all due respect, he'll like, give me space, and then he'll show up and tell me stuff, and he will not leave until I tell his mom. And if I tell his mom, he'll go away, I presumably to go to class or whatnot, because when we go home, we're greeted by all our ancestors, and then we go to class and like review our life, and then we like make a new soul contract and stuff like that. So it's just quite interesting because it's the first time that I've had someone I've known that's passed away that's just like hanging out with me and talking to me about how they feel and stuff. And like in this experience, he was like, I didn't feel like anybody really liked me. And it's like weird how much people, I'm like, everybody loved you, you stupid idiot. Like you could have eaten breakfast, Anyway, that's between me and him.
Cool. You made me remember something, and you mentioned Ken Kesey, and he's the guy who was going all over the U.S. Not all over the U.S., but giving acid laced orange juice to people. And let me ask you this question, because obviously people have different trips, and things happen to them differently when they're on acid or any of these psychedelics. But they talk. Ken Kesey was going around talking about different forms of enlightenment. What's interesting to me is I know that people who do that have very similar experiences. They could be in different parts of the world, but they're still having similar experiences and seeing the same things. Can you talk about that, or similarities of trips and what happens?
Yeah, so I think that, there's so many different ways to explain that, but like what comes to mind is that there's this universe that we're in. There's also different dimensions. There's also like so many different like versions of self. So I totally believe in the multiverse, and that you can align your consciousness with different versions of yourself. And there's this great movie called Everything Everywhere All at Once. So getting into like any kind of psychedelic channel or experience, as I just feel like you're experiencing the universe without like blockages, you know what I mean? Or without the ego getting in the way, because I don't think that you actually need psychedelics to have experiences. And when I say this, people are like, no, I'm like, yeah, because think about it. Like your brain is connected to a nervous system, and your brain is what? Salt. And like, it's just and you think about it, it's like so simple. And then it's connected to a set of wires, which is your nervous system, that communicates to everything, and so in your body. And so why wouldn't it? And it's also been scientifically proven and declassified by the CIA that everything has an energy field. Humans, animals, like your couch that you sit on, has an energy field and can hold energy. So what I think actually happens when you have a psychedelic experience is you're accessing the universal energy grid. Okay. So everybody has what's called an energy key or energy imprint. That's what I call it. I don't know if that's like the actual name or if there's different. I don't know. But so I have a particular energy key that is expressing itself to your Cameron Logan's energy key. And what's going on in the background between us right now is the energy keys are communicating, and we might be accessing the Akashic record. We might be accessing different lifetimes we've had together. Or because I feel like if we're talking on this level already, that we know each other, you know, this is not like a grocery store conversation. So that's all going on. And I just think, like, if you come down to this planet, because there's definitely other planets, okay? There's definitely other universes. There's definitely other places where we could be working, because my experience is that I am not actually of human origin. Like the actual thing that makes sense to me is pretty wacky, but I'm going to say anyway, because I feel like this is a place where you can talk about whatever the fuck you want. I think that humans, like the human imprint, I think it was stolen. What I actually think is that there's a race, an alien race that's been feeding off the Earth's core because it's like really juicy, and they've been feeding off the Earth's core, looking for Earth or Earth-like planet to feed off of since the dinosaurs were here. And I think like a meteor actually hit the Earth. Like, I think that's real. And they're like, oh shit, what do we do? Because we can't feed off the dinosaurs and their energy anymore. What do we do? We need a different race to like implant on the Earth. And I think they went and found this like baby alien race, which is humans, us. And they took the code. So I really think that there's a different human race that's us, but different on the home planet, right? Because people talk about Atlantis and Lemuria all the time. And I think that the code was taken from there and planted on Earth, and then, you know, evolution happened as it did. That's what I think happened. And I think, you know, I'm either from the original alien race that's humans, or I'm from like a different universe and I created this universe, and I'm serving as a human here on Earth so that I can extend this planet to the outer galaxies so that it can reunite with its original race and planet. You know what I mean? This just makes sense to me. I don't know where I'm getting this from. It just like makes a whole ton of sense. And I would not ever tell my psychiatrist this.
You know, we hear about information and ways. Let me throw this out there. The computer, I mean, that's a way that we can store information. We can retrieve information. You mentioned the Akashic record, which is basically the universe contains all this information. And, you know, that there are people out there, and maybe you're one of them, that's one of your goals is to retrieve this information. And that's part of the Enlightenment. But there's a couple of guys, Rudolf Steiner and Edgar Casey, who basically felt that they had access to the Akashic records. So we texted a while back, you mentioned the word galactic source coding being.
Mm-hmm. So that's what
Talk
it
about
came
that.
to me in like this meditation, that I'm a galactic source code being. So that's what I was talking about, like a being of this universe that created this universe. So, and I'm not saying like I'm special or whatnot, but I'm saying like, what is the Big Bang Theory? I feel like I was part of that. I feel like my original universe collapsed because that's what happens when it gets too old and it stops expanding. It starts collapsing on you. So me and then several million of my friends were like, our home is going to collapse. What do we do? You know? So we decided to get together and like friction our energy and like explode ourselves and make this universe. So then this universe is now expanding. So it's like this universe is actually considered a baby universe, but we are old, you know? So then I got all this information about how like there's different people from different universes here, like helping to sustain this universe to make sure it doesn't like prematurely collapse. And so I also got information that says like, I am quote unquote responsible for like these beings being able to find the energy key of this universe, and like they meet and talk to me and my other friends, and they're like, I want you to be like my mentor or whatnot, because there will be people that I meet where they're like, Mela, what is going on here? And I'm like, oh, let me tell you how you do stuff here at this universe. Like it's just kind of like an information desk sort of feeling that I have. That's just what makes sense to me anyway, because I literally just talked to, because I have a podcast that I'd love to interview you on. So I was interviewing Gina, my friend, and she was having all these questions about how to communicate. She was like, I feel like I have so many difficulties communicating with everybody around me, and I just never know how they're feeling, and I just overthink everything all the time. And then she's still texting me, which I'm not saying it's anything weird. I love it. She's just like, oh my God. And she's also a pianist. Like, she plays the piano. She like plays classical piano. She's like, oh my God, Mela, ever since we channeled and like you told me all this stuff about myself, it's kind of like I'm accessing people's file, and it's just like easy to talk to them now. Like, that's so great. So it's like, whatever, like being around me sort of like, I'm so afraid to sound arrogant, but it sort of like upgrades your experience. It like streamlines your experience being human, and it's like easy. It becomes easier because whatever my work is, it like goes into your field and it like streamlines the whole experience. And I just think that is because I've had a lot of different lifetimes. Like, I literally have dreams of many different lifetimes. Like, most of the time I come here as a man, and I love to join the military and like be a spy. It's like my favorite. It's like my preferred avatar. So then I learned, like, everybody that comes here multiple times, because you actually don't have to come here more than once. If you come here multiple times, you develop what's called a preferred avatar. So like the preferred type of human that you want to be. And I happen to love being a man who joins the military. I don't know why. It's fun because it's like structured and stuff like that. And there's like rules, and like you can also do you have a lot of leeway if you take the spy track. And it's like, and then in my current life, I do energy readings too. And actually a lot of just not a disturbing, but an interesting number of clients of mine are either active military or retired military. And I'm like, why would they be talking to me unless and they're like, you know what you're talking about. I'm like, yeah, I don't know why. Because I wouldn't even be able to join the military in this life because I was born with cerebral palsy, which I also think I requested to be born with cerebral palsy, like a little bit of it, just so that I had a fail-safe so that I wouldn't join the military. Because I feel like I had a meeting with what's called the Council of Elders. So the Council of Elders is what helps you write your soul contract and approves it for you to come here. I feel like they told me that I couldn't do like my preferred avatar because I'd done it so many times. And I was like, well, why not? And then the answer I got was, well, because if you do it another time, the risk of getting found out happens. It's like, found out by who? And then they're like, well, you know that there's like an alien race that's trying to track you guys, and like there's a war going on for the energy of this planet. I'm like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And it's just like, then I wake up and I'm like, why does the dream always end when I'm like, oh, that makes sense, when it doesn't make sense? Like, I still want to be able to explain it to everyone else. Just because my oversoul understands what's going on doesn't mean like I have language to explain it to people, you know?
So do we have a soul that basically time trips into different vehicles, different people, or is it always different? Is there a common seed that stays with these different lives, or how does that work?
I think you can choose. It's, I mean, I'm really big into like choosing your own adventure sort of vibe. Other people disagree with me. I just feel like, you know, all truths are true. You know, I love that line. All truths are true. So it's like, if your listeners of your podcast are vibing with what I say and somehow it makes sense to them, I feel like the truth that I'm speaking is true for them. If you're listening to me and you're like, I don't have any idea what you're saying and I think you're bonkers, it's not true for you. There's plenty of other people that are speaking their truth that you align with. So I feel like it's this journey to find what you align with. And I just feel like we don't have to be here on this planet. Like, if we're not from here, you don't have to come here and serve a lifetime. You can go literally anywhere else. You can even go to different dimensions. Like, I feel like there's multiple dimensions on this planet right here. Like, if you think about it, like, it's kind of like going to California. California is like a totally different vibe than most of the rest of the US, if not the whole rest of the US. It's like its own vibing economy. It's like the 6th largest economy, if not the 5th largest economy in the entire planet. And so, you know, and then you have like billionaires like Bezos and Musk, who are like trying to go to space, but it's like they have pennies compared to the trillionaires who actually make the decisions on this planet. So it's very much like, and I don't really want to get political, but I think we can all agree that most of us don't have the money. And I feel like money is also a program that was implanted here because we used to barter. I don't think that money was supposed to come here. I feel like it was implanted or as a means of control. And also, I just want people to know that money is an energy, and it really is like an energy. So if you, because think about how the subconscious mind is created. Like everywhere you go, your subconscious mind, which is the gatekeeper for how you act, is created from 0 to 7 years old, human time. So if you're listening to money doesn't grow on trees, or I don't have money for that, or do you think I'm made of money, or you have to work hard for money, or any number of other ways that like people like minimize access to money or like put barriers to money, it's like, well, what do you think you're doing? Like, you know what I mean? Like there's this conversation specifically around money to make sure that you live in lack. And it's just like crazy to me because once you remove those barriers, like I honestly literally have been self-employed for 18 years. Like I'm only 36 and I just was like, I cannot work for other people. It makes me crazy. And I just was like, you know what? The universe is going to take care of me. And like, I'm just going to get money. And I've never had a problem accessing money since then. So
Nice.
Because I just don't think that I have to work hard to get it. I think that it comes easily to me.
So if you're part of different lifetimes or part of different universes, and you live through or you've experienced the collapse in the universe and another big bang, and you obviously have an awareness of that, maybe even a memory. You talked about galactic source codes and Akashic records. Is it an overwhelming and confusing thing to deal with all of that at once? Because just being a human and doing what we do is hard enough, but having that on your mind or in your self is got to be even more daunting.
I could see how you would say that, but actually no, that's been the really easy part. Like the part that bothers me is the part where it's like being human is like this, people are like, oh, you have to do things this certain way. I'm like, why? Like I have always, like, even when I was little, like 3 years old, and I was just talking, I would spend time in my room like, hey, why am I here? I know somebody's going to tell me why. I know somebody's going to tell me what my mission is. And I'm just like this 3-year-old baby. And then like finally somebody comes down and they're like, should we tell her, Bob? And Bob is like, I don't know, dude. I don't know, Tim. Should we tell her? And they're like, well, she's talking a lot about it and she seems to know and she seems to remember who she is. And so like what they said to me initially was that I had to grow up first. And I was like, no, I want to know now. Like fucking tell me why I'm here. And so then they started answering my questions. Like literally, this is my experience. I'm like a 3-year-old child just demanding answers from the universe from my room as a kid. And it was fine because not fine, but I was left alone a lot.
Right.
Because my parents were like, fighting with each other and they didn't have time to see, to the well-being of their children. I'm not trying to trash them, because if they were bothering me all the time, then I wouldn't have had the time that I had to basically commune with the universe and talk to like aliens and stuff like that. So I think it was a great time because what's difficult for me is actually when I'm outside and I'm doing what's called 3D stuff, like going to the grocery store or like going to the bank, depositing money, or like picking up my kid from school. Like I just fucking hate it. I'm just like, can't you guys see the grid? Like the energy grid that's all around us? Like, can't you fucking see like what we're doing? Like, it just feels like some people are just walking around asleep. And I oftentimes I've gotten in trouble with like past partners for this. They'll be like, why don't you care about stuff? Because I'm like, I don't give a fuck. I'm like, I'm sorry to be fucking aggressive and rude right now, but like, do we have a roof over our head? Is there food in the fridge? Like, whatever you're dealing with and whatever I'm dealing with is going to pass. Are you going to care about it in 5 years or even 5 months? No. You know what I mean? Like, stop. Like, it's hard for me to deal with a lot of like the perceived disaster of being human. It's just like, oh my God. So it's like friends of mine will be like, oh my God, Mela, like this horrible thing happened to me today. It was like the fucking worst. And I'm like, really? Like, did you eat today? Are you hydrated? Did you have a good night's sleep? Yeah, all right. Oh, okay, you're doing good. Okay. So it's not, I think people, either have a really good time around me and they're like my really good friend, or they hate my guts. It's not, there's no real middle ground for the experience of me, which I'm totally fine with.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you got a lot going on. I mean, in addition to, you know, creating this this ability to make a living without having to work for somebody. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, and a lot of people, you know, aren't able to find peace with themselves, especially when they go home. You know, tough day at work, whatever. Some people can't cope with that, but you're making your own way and it's working.
Yeah, but I also feel like anybody can do that. You know what I mean? Like, I really am not being facetious. Like, when people say, oh, you read energy and you're psychic to whatnot, I could never. I'm like, you can. Like, you just have to learn how you communicate with your guides, because there's like psychometry, you know, touching of an object. That's how you get information. Or because I have what's called like a clear channel. So it's like I just get information in my brain and I speak it out. And there's people that do automatic writing, and there's people that like do through, you know, performance art, or like singing, or like painting. Like, there's so many different dancing. There's so many different ways to communicate with spirits. Like, don't box yourself in, you know? And I just think that sometimes people are scared of what's beyond the veil and they don't want to go there. And I feel like, you know, this concept of awakening that people talk about, I feel like everybody has an opportunity to awaken. But you also don't have to. So it's just like, I try to be, I'm trying my best. I don't know how well I'm doing at it, to be gentle to people that just don't want to talk about anything beyond how's your day, and when nobody really cares about the answer to that question.
Right.
Because I just want people to know that everyone is consumed with their own reality. And also, your own reality is constructed by you. Okay? So whatever you think is going on, that's what's happening, right? Make sense? So if you think you are having a bad day, that's what's going on, you know? If you can get to the point, because I'm not saying bad things don't happen, because these are all experiences, right?
Sure.
But if a bad thing, in quotation marks, happen, like let's say you get into a minor car crash and you're like, shit, now I have to pay for repairs and stuff. So instead of thinking, oh, I'm a bad person, oh, I shouldn't have done this, and live in the woulda, shoulda, coulda, which takes time and energy, the best thing you can actually do is accept what happened. Like, oh, I got into a minor car accident. Oops, you know, forgive yourself immediately, because you cannot go back in time, or at least we don't have the technology to do that right now on this planet. And say, okay, and then you can either accept it for exactly what it is, or you can make up a totally different thing. Because guess what? The human brain does not know if you're lying to it. Like, whatever you need. And I'm not saying accuse other people, but like, if it's going to make your brain feel better to think that this is not your fault, and I'm not saying like be a narcissist. What I'm saying is, like, if it's going to make your brain feel better to think that you didn't do anything wrong and it's not your fault, even if you are at fault, then that's what I advise you to tell your brain, because the goal is for you to be able to move on with your life and get things done, you know?
Who are the aliens and where are they from? Or what are they from?
There's several different alien races on this planet right now. And so there's like, you know, people talk about like the reptilians and the gray aliens a lot. There's not just the reptilians and the gray aliens on the planet. And so I feel like the reptilians are the ones that are feeding off the core. Like, literally, this alien race is feeding off the core. So like, they want to get information out of you. So it's like, if you think about it, whose imagination are we living in here? It's basically old colonial men who wrote the Declaration of Independence, ironically called the Declaration of Independence. Nobody's free here. And then what happens? Like, if you look at like snippets of history, right? This whole conversation of, and again, I'm not trying to be political, but just think about how they're saying nobody wants to work. Regardless of your personal political feelings about that statement, you can go and trace that literal statement back in time on this country, back into the early 1800s, right? And so there's just a cycle of like, the workers are like, hey, we're being treated like shit, we don't like it. Then the ruling elite, the ruling class says, oh, nobody wants to work, and then we get gaslit back into working. So what's going on in the modern day? Pandemic happened, everyone went home. A lot of us work from home now, and nobody wants to go back to the office. And then you have people like, and I'm sorry to call it the Kardashians if everybody's a fan, but the Kardashians are fucking saying this, okay? And that's getting aggressive because like they want to control, like the 99% versus the 1% is very real. So it's like there's very small, there's actually 14 families that have most of the money, okay? And so it's in their best interest to keep doing what? Getting the money, okay? So if they can gaslight you into saying, okay, hi, welcome to Earth, you're a baby, you got to grow up, you got to go to public school, which I'm not saying is bad. I had a somewhat good time at public school. You got to go to public school. But now you have companies like Amazon who are, who, by the way, Bezos is definitely a fucking reptilian, fucking buying time in the classroom to teach you how to work at Amazon. What in the fuck? Okay, so they're paying these schools money for that. So you grow up, and then what is the question everybody asks you? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be? Like ad nauseum. What do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be? It's like, how are you supposed to know what you want to be when you grow up? And then like in the 80s, a lot of things happened in the 80s. Like it used to be so cheap and or free. It was free to go to college in this country until the mid 1960s. And then in the 80s, like the cost of college like fucking like went up 1,000%. It's like nobody wants to talk about that. Like these are just the facts. They're facts, okay? And so why did that happen? Well, because you don't want people to have access to higher education because you want to keep them stupid. Why do you want them to be stupid? Because you don't want them to be questioning what's going on around them. Okay. So this is all created environment by aliens. I think it's by aliens. I do. Because consciously speaking, if you think about consciousness is benevolent. It is. So like if we were left to our own devices, would we be separating ourselves? I don't think so. But I just want a disclaimer, like white privilege is very real. There are different races. Like, you know, racism is super real, okay? I'm not erasing that. But I am saying that these, at the same time, I really want people to hear me when I'm saying that these are categories that are placed upon us. Because like, what if, like this alien race that's feeding off the core, this reptilian alien race, what if they were like, oh, flip a coin, black or white? Literally. Who's going to be who are we going to gaslight these people to say is the dominating race? You know, I think they just picked white people because it was a flip of a coin, and that's how they create this narrative. And so then you have the gray aliens, and then you have the blue aliens. So that's how we just categorize them by colors because that's what we understand. The blue aliens are kind of like the benevolent, just they want to help. They're like, what can we do for you? So we call them the helpers from the other realms because they come here and they try to help us with our consciousness. And there's also another race of aliens that, and I think the blue aliens kind of work in tandem with the green aliens, and they help give us upgrades to our DNA. So that's who I have access to right now. So there's the reptilians, the gray aliens, the blue aliens, and the green ones.
I've never been a big fan of aliens, and I think, you know, you're telling me that they're not. I know people who swear that they're benevolent and they're here to help us, but I don't agree with that. I've never agreed with that.
Some of them are, not everybody. And so like the meaner ones are actually way more prevalent, just so you know. I mean, I'm not saying you're wrong because you obviously have run into the mean ones. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so, you're absolutely correct. Like you probably, I mean, I'd love to hear your stories because it sounds like you ran into some really nasty ones.
You know, I think that you were talking about, you know, the Big Bang and the universe and whatever, but what about parallel universes and that part of the physical part of our being? Because I know that you know, I've often said that, you know, there's this parallel universe that runs next to us, and we have people, I believe, or not even people, but different entities that inhabit this planet that can jump. And so let's go backwards just a little bit and talk about psychedelics. And is that a potential gateway to a parallel universe, or are we just using it in the universe that we're in right now?
No, it's a gateway to wherever you want to take it to. Like, because like,
How do you control
There
it?
have been times when I've been completely sober and I've seen tears in the grid in the universe. Like, okay.
Right.
And that I also have a friend who, I don't know, they probably don't want me to name them. I have a friend who has a friend who works at NASA. And these two people have discussions because I was talking to him about this, right? And then he said, I have a friend that works for NASA who's literally seen different dimensions, but there's no way that they can explain this or confirm it, you know? So that's confirmation enough for me that there are parallel universes and different dimensions existing right now in real time. And there's it's all happening at once, right? So if you take a psychedelic, you are opening your consciousness. You're opening what's called your third eye. You're elevating your chakras. Everything's vibrating at a different level. And, people talk about low vibrational beings and high vibrational beings. And it's just like, you can change the vibration of your energy field just by changing it, you know? And before I really was putting together all this information, because I was talking to the universe when I was a little kid, then when I was in New York as 19 years old, I met this person from the Basque region, which is like this island between France and Spain, and they fight over it and stuff.
Right.
And this person was super just esoteric and would tell me all kinds of things that I understood but was still learning about. They were like, listen, you can change your energy. If you don't want to attract low vibrational people, you just say that you don't want to attract them, and then you vibe at a higher level and you just say, this isn't going to happen to me. And I'm like, wow. They just would talk about it. I'm like, this makes sense to me because I feel like that there's different, it's kind of like synesthesia to me, like people that can see colors. Like if you are on shrooms, the experiences that I have is that things are moving. Like there's this pulse throughout everything. Like you look at the rug's moving, like not physically moving, but like there's this extra layer of activity and that you can see. And so what if your energy field is also doing the same thing? And there are different gateways that it can link up into because you've been to that realm before, or you've, done work on that part of the dimension. I mean, there's different things that say that this is what's called a prison dimension. Like we're in prison here. Like our minds are literally imprisoned, kind of like the Matrix. And then there's also different theories that there are different dimensions on this planet right now that we can access or not, depending on the mindset that we're in. Like you can go into the meditation and then you can ask to go meet different people. You can I have experiences of being asleep and astral traveling with what feels like is a briefcase and then going to have meetings about the direction of humanity. And I'm like, oh my God, why am I at a meeting about the direction of humanity? And they're like, don't you know, you're one of the older beings serving human life. I'm like, okay, sure, whatever you say. I just don't question anything anymore because I feel like if I sat around questioning it, I would just go actually crazy.
Exactly. That question that I asked, I had such a hard time asking it. And this was the reason why, is because I'm so opinionated about our universe and the multiverse and string theory. When I was a kid and I was probably maybe 7, I remember I used to draw pictures of the planet, and I used to call it threads of the universe. And I used to just take this whole picture that I drew and just draw tiny lines all the way across it. And I always had this impression that, anything that I did here, if I reached up my hand, it would affect somebody far off or, infinite distance away. I just felt everything was connected. And so when I was asking that, I was stumbling and fumbling, bumbling, but I was trying not to lead. I wanted you to tell me what I wanted to hear. I was trying not to lead that question, but, we're all part of one thing. And it's to me, it's like one infinite sized organism. It's all one thing.
Yeah, I feel like it's a machine. Right. The machine just wants to do what the machine wants to do, and the machine will do the machine stuff.
And I might just be like a little one cell of this.
Yeah. And so
machine.
if you vibrate with the larger picture of the machine, you feel I feel so much better whenever I'm doing whatever the little voice in my head says. Like literally, like, before he passed away, Steve Jobs, what are your personal feelings about him? He had this great speech about like following the whisper.
Mm-hmm.
Like whatever you're hearing when it's like you're you're just by yourself and you're just thinking or you're trailing off, and there's like this whisper will show up and be like, hey, you should write that book, or you should move to that new city, or you should ask that guy or girl out on a date. It'll tell you exactly what there is for you personally to do. And the more you listen to it, I mean, every time I don't listen to it, I feel like I take it on the short end of the stick. Like a small example of that is that one day I got the message to take a different pair of pants. I was like, why? That seems stupid. I totally disregarded it.
Right.
And then not even an hour later, I'm walking down the street and it starts raining and I have an umbrella, and I was like, see, I have an umbrella, that'd be fine. But this car drives way too close to the curb and like splashes me, and like my pants are now drenched. I'm like, oh, that's why I was supposed to take a new pair of pants. So then it's like, is everything predetermined? Because Gina literally showed me this picture that she had started working on like 2 months prior to me coming to visit her in Tampa. And it's us. It's a picture of us talking and recording podcasts and stuff like that. And I'm like, oh my God. So you knew that I was going to be here like as much as 2 months ago. And there's these people called the Psychic Twins, and they went on Coast to Coast, which is this great radio show I've been listening to for years. And they predicted, or maybe not predicted, but they warned everyone about 9/11. They literally is a recording before 9/11 happened saying, there's going to be mass casualty. It's going to be in New York. It's going to be like Twin Towers. They're saying all this, which is like matches up with what happened. So it's like, how much of it is already predicted? Like how much of it is already predetermined because that's what you agreed to experience on this planet? Like, is this planet a game? That's what I think. Is this all a game? Is this like literally in a video game right now? Or are we just doing this to see?
It's a shitty game sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I can say that, yeah. Lately, I haven't.
But also, there's free will. Like
Yes,
what's stopping me? The only way I know how to really explain this in an impactful way is like, what's stopping me right now from going outside and standing in traffic? Like, I physically have the capability of doing that. It's just that I don't want to.
Look at our solar system and just think about that. And gravity is an amazing thing, but we can predict where the moon is going to be tomorrow. We can predict where the sun is going to be in our solar system or in our galaxy. We can predict in 1.5 million years what alignment the planets will have. So, there's only a finite thing at that level that can happen. So why not just a finite level of things that can happen to us? There's only a few things possibly that can happen tomorrow when you leave your house or whatever. So
right.
Is it predetermined? Sort of.
I also think there's leeway because there's free will and stuff like that. But I also think that there's this, because I've been into so many situations where I could have died, like more than one. Like my dad almost drowned me. I've had guns pointed at me. I just, I feel like there's a lot of reasons why I should not be here right now. Right. But I also feel like every single time I was in like a life and death situation that there was this just like calm guide that came over me. It's just like, okay, well, do this, because the other thing is like when I was homeless, great example I have of this is that we were pickpocketing people at a church. Just I don't have any shame saying that because we were all hungry. So we would just take the cash. And one time my friend was like, we should try the ATM. I'm like, no, there's like so many possibilities. You can't get it. That sounds dumb. So he's like, I'm going to try it. So there's this ATM on the outside of the building. And so he's standing there and I'm just like, I just get this feeling that we got to go. Like, we got to go now, And I tell him, I was like, yo, dude, you got to drop this. You got to let go of these cards. You got to come with me. We got to go around the corner right now. And he's like, nope. He's totally involved in what he's doing. So I leave and I literally just go down the block and around the corner. And that's all I do. And then I wait literally 2 minutes. I'm not even kidding. And then I peek around the corner. The dude is surrounded by 5 cops. And how in the fuck? Because he ended up spending 5 months in Rikers Island. Nothing happened to me.
Wow.
And how do I explain that? I don't know how to explain that other than I will tell you that like, I feel like the universe and your intuition is always feeding you information, anyone. But I feel like it's levels of urgency, because that day they were screaming, like, leave now. Like, if they had hands, they would have pushed me out of the way. You know what I mean?
It's level. I think it's level of urgency, and a lot of people, we've lost the inability to actually read what's happening around us. I mean, we don't pay that close attention anymore like we used to. There's too many distractions.
Oh yeah, but I do, only because I feel like, and it goes back to my dad.
Because
like,
you're
who's my
intuitive,
dad? Is
but
he
some
my
people
friend?
aren't.
I'm intuitive, but also, like, I had to watch my dad as a kid in order to, like, avoid, like, his abuse. It was very intense. So it's just like, if I wasn't paying 100% attention to him when he was around, like, things could be a lot worse for me. So it's like this cat and mouse game. So yeah, did that heighten my intuition? Yes, of course it did.
All right. Well, Mela, it's been great talking to you. We've gone a little bit over, which is okay. Sometimes we do that.
Oh,
and
yeah, you can edit it, whatever you want.
No, I'm not going to edit. I don't edit.
No, I had a great time. I
had a good time
like
too.
10 minutes passed. So thank you for having me.
I would love to do it again. And again, if people are wondering and want to find more about you, you can find her at Méla Shea on Facebook. And she's also on Amazon. She wrote a book called Vagrant Gimp by Méla Shea. And I got to read a little bit about that today. So that's something else something that I learned today. So once again, you
can also find me on TikTok, avatar_Mela. So my name is spelled Mela. I'm sure my name will be up there. And then my Instagram, avatar_Mela. My book's only $3, and I think it's free if you want a hardback, it's like $10. But there's only $3 if you buy it. Audio, or not audiobook, you know what I mean? Like what's it called when you read it on your screen?
Yeah.
And like, I'm around. Like, I love conversations. If you want to talk to me about anything, even though I was like really passionate sometimes in this recording, I really love talking to people and their experiences. Especially love talking to you about like your experience being a human. But you have
a website too.
Oh yeah, standupsychic.com. I am an energy reader professionally for like 15 years now. So if you want to book me in a formal capacity, you can also do that. I love doing that. Obviously, money is still a thing that we all need. But yeah, I'm just around and I love connecting. And I'll travel. I'll do your event. I'll do birthday party, whatever. I made my own Oracle card deck that I have to print. But yeah, right. I'm really thrilled with it. All right. I'll be in Rhode Island for Halloween, just I could talk about whatever. So, but thank you so much for having me on my podcast. And Cameron's going to be on my podcast, which is also called Vagrant Gimp, the Vagrant Gimp podcast with Méla Shea. So Sweet. Thanks, guys.
Again, check out her website at standupsychic.com and Vagrant Gimp on Amazon.com. Mela, thank you so much.
Thanks, Cameron. I appreciate it.